Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is the greatest time of the day. From the center of the universe, New York City, it's the main event you've been waiting for. It's time to go in the cage with Cyclone.
Guess who's back? It's me. I'm back again. Welcome once again to In the Cage with Cyclone. It has been such a long time. I can't tell you the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations that I've gone through with the show. Just for all of you, because I love all of you guys so much. So I wanted to update you before we kick off the show. I am no longer with BWRN Radio. There was a falling out. Creative differences got in the way of things. And I've had to move on. So what I'm doing now is, for at least this show, and maybe two more in the very near future, I have taken the cage, I have folded it up, put it in the truck, and I'm driving around. And I'm stopping at places to interview people. So, what I have for this show is not one, not two, but three very special guests coming up. I'm not going to tell you who they are just yet. You're going to have to listen. See, in the business, that's called a tease. And I'm teasing you. But I promise you, you will like all three interviews. They're from three very different people and three very different visions of the sport we all love, mixed martial arts. I'm probably going to do another one of these type shows. And then I'm trying really hard to work in a fan show. I really, really would like to do a fan show. But we'll see how that goes. We'll see if I can pull that magic trick off. But in the meantime, I want you guys to sit back, relax, listen to this show. Keep following In the Cage with Cyclone on Facebook. Keep sharing it with your friends, your enemies, your family, everybody you know. And this way you guys can find out what's going to be happening next. The show is going to be taping at Brick House Studios here in Brooklyn, New York. And I believe it's on iHeart, iTunes, possibly Spreaker, possibly something else too. I don't remember. It's kind of early, and I'm very forgetful at this time that I'm saying this to you guys. But keep it right here. Keep following on Facebook, like I said. Keep listening, and enjoy what's coming up right after this.
This is Frank Edgar. This is the Barbarian Tim Boach.
I'm World Series of Fighting undefeated lightweight champion Justin Gaethje.
MMA legend, UFC Hall of Famer, Iceman. Check it out. If you got the guts, step in the cage with Cyclone.
All right, so guys, like I've told you all, time to take In the Cage with Cyclone on the road. Rolled up the cage, put it in the car, drove to a beautiful part of Brooklyn, and joining me right now, none other than Mr. Matt Riddle. And by the way, right off the bat, I gotta say, Happy birthday, Mr. Riddle.
Thank you very much, bro. It's been a good day. You know, turned 32, won style battle, and you know, I think it's just gonna keep getting better and better. Last year after my birthday, I beat, wrestled Shibata, won the Atlas title. 2017 was amazing. You know, I think 2018 is gonna be even better. You know, sometimes I don't even think it's real.
You know, I don't even remember the age of 32.
Hey, man, that's a good thing. You made it that long. I hope I make it that long.
Well, I got to ask you right off the bat.
Sure.
With things happening next Saturday, big in combat sports between MMA and boxing, lots of cards happening. You're the first person to pin John Jones.
I didn't pin him, I just beat him twice.
Something that Daniels had issues with, obviously. So what's the secret to beating John?
You know, John Jones is tough. I wouldn't say there's a secret. You know, there's no weakness in a guy like John Jones. Just like I have no weakness. It's just like Cormier doesn't have any weaknesses. The big thing with somebody like Jones or somebody like Cormier is they're bullies deep down. And the thing is, the only way to beat a bully is by breaking a bully. Once you break a bully, they can't fight. That's why Jones was able to beat Dan, and that's why he's been able to be so successful. He hasn't been broken yet. He was in his prime, you know, other things like that. Now, if he even comes back, he won't be in his prime anymore, and he will be broken. It's just the way it goes. It's MMA. You're in your prime. When you're in your prime, once you're out of it, you get beat up.
Now, you've said, besides doing, the indie circuit, you would like to do and head over to New Japan.
Correct, yeah.
If things align perfectly, and the guys at Ryzen, or even One Championship, even though they're in Malaysia, say, hey, Matt, 600,000 or in that ballpark range, 1 or 2 bouts, do you go back?
You know what? To be completely honest, I mean, that's a good amount of money, so possibly. But at the same time, I really like the profession I'm in now with the wrestling. I really built my brand, my name. I'm not going to get into numbers, but I probably make more money now than I ever did when I was in the UFC, and I've made like 100,000 in one night in the UFC. Difference is I only fight 2 or 3 times a year. Wrestling, I'm going to wrestle 8 times this weekend. I get paid every time I wrestle, and I get paid good. You know the difference? And I'd also wrestle next weekend, and I'd wrestle the following weekend, and the following weekend, and the following weekend. So it's like, I'd rather get that steady check making big money rather than make one big check for once in a time. Another thing too, just for my mental well-being, I like to entertain people. I like to be in front of crowds. When I would fight, you get all this attention, you're in front of the camera, this, that, and the other thing, and then nobody talks to you, nobody cares, there's this fight, that fight, you don't fight for another 3 to 4 months. And then people start talking about you again, and then you're back in the spotlight. So you kind of go, yeah, cloud 9, all the way to the bottom. So, for me, pro wrestling, I get to live that high all the time. I get to entertain all the time. I get to wrestle all the time. I get to do what I train to do all the time. While fighting, I would train so hard, so much, and only get to show people about 30 to 45 minutes of my whole training camp a year.
Now, being that you just said that, is there any part of you that even slightly misses?
Of course. I love getting in there, and you can probably see that when I wrestle. I kick people. I'm snug. Right. I'm extremely snug with everybody I wrestle. I get physical. But at the same time, I think that's what wrestling has been missing, that kind of strong style. And I think with my background, my toughness, and my athleticism, it just brings it out. And like I said, I do miss it. I love it because there's only one MMA. Pro wrestling comes close, but MMA is MMA. But at the same time, I'm in a world now where we all work together to make each other better. The goal isn't to hurt somebody. The goal is to have such a good match that we're both winners, right? While I'm fighting, my goal was to hurt people, make sure they don't want to hurt me and break them, right? I was just tired of hurting people. That was another thing. I don't like hurting people. I like winning. I like money. I like supporting my family. Really don't like hurting people. That's why wrestling's great. I get to do the fighting. I get to make content. I get to get the aggression out. And I don't kill anybody. It's amazing. My kids think it's a little corny, but I think it's awesome. I love it.
And here's the thing. Would you say that training for wrestling, pro wrestling, because you were a true wrestler?
I was a trainee. Yeah, I wrestled amateur in high school and college, and then I trained at the Monster Factory when I first started pro wrestling.
Would you say that that's more stressful than like BJJ or Muay Thai?
Well, like for me, I had the amateur background. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was very easy for me to pick up, and it was fun, you know. MMA is a little more aggressive. Like Jiu-Jitsu you can have fun with, even kickboxing you can have fun. Once you mix MMA into there, so you get a different animal with that. You know, you're in a cage one, there's no breaks, you know, cage, nothing breaks anything. You just keep punching until somebody's out or choked, you know. So it's just such a different world, you know.
Now, are you friendly with anybody still from over there?
What's that?
Are you still friendly with anybody
Well,
over there?
I don't think any of the people I'm friendly with still work there. They all got fired, you know, because they cleaned house when they had to start paying more of their executive people more money, so they fired them all and hired interns. So, like, half the people I knew in the UFC when I was there, right before I got fired, they all got fired. And then they fired John Fitch, then they fired me, then they fired... Basically, they just cleaned the office so they could, like, cut ends. I was getting paid a lot of money to fight. I worked my way up, you know. I had 12 fights in the UFC. I was making like 50 grand a fight. Why pay me when you could fire me and John Fitch, and you could just have an Ultimate Fighter and pay those guys 8 and 8? You could have 10 fights and pay for all of them, or you could have me and John Fitch fight once. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it was smart business, money, but I think that's the problem with a lot of business. You know, you don't get the real talent, you don't get the real good, because everybody's trying to cut and make more profit for themselves.
Now, look, you're in sick shape. You absolutely, we got to call it how it is.
Yeah.
All right.
Not bad.
Now, I don't know if it's a totally sore subject, but being on Tough 7, you were coached by Rampage.
Yep.
Rampage is fighting in the second fight of the heavyweight tournament in Bellator against Chael. Do you see your former coach beating?
Winning. Chael's he's a good fighter, but Rampage's wrestling is really good, and he can knock people out with ease. Like Rampage is a street fighter that can stop takedowns and hurt people. Chael doesn't stand a chance. It's not even a close fight. The difference is like Chael beat Vanderlei, but Vanderlei can't stop a takedown to save his soul, and it's no disrespect to him. He's a world-class black belt, world-class striker. His wrestling's not there, kind of like Anderson.
Right.
Rampage Jackson, very good MMA wrestler, very good boxer in MMA, very dangerous. I don't see Chael getting out of the first round with him.
Now, I don't know if you would necessarily be glued to the television, but do you think you'll at least catch it later on and see how?
You know, probably. I'll probably watch some highlights of the Bellator fights. I'll say this: Bellator's been doing a really good job of getting people interested in their fights, and like that heavyweight tournament. There's a lot of big names in there with Frank Mir's in there as well, and yeah, it's a stacked tournament. It's a bunch of guys you want to see fight each other. It's great.
So, what would you say has been the absolute #1 best advice anybody's ever given you?
Be yourself. It's that simple. Be yourself, especially in wrestling. Everybody thinks, thank you. A lot of people think, oh, be a character, do this, do that, cut this corny promo. No, you know what's relatable? You. You know what sells? You. Even if it's you or me, whoever. You're relatable. Some fictional Viking from the whatever century is not relatable to any of us if we live in 2018. A dude that used to fight in the UFC doesn't anymore, has a wife and the kids and everything else like that, and is just grinding on the indies. These people get behind. They understand where I'm coming from. They've seen what's happened to me throughout my whole career. There's a real story there, and there's something they can really bite their teeth into. Be yourself.
And on that note, I want to thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate you.
And happy bro birthday.
Oh, thank you, bro. Thank you so much, man. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks a lot. You too.
Yeah.
Now, when we come back, we're going to have another very big surprise superstar right after this.
Hi, I'm Jim Miller.
This is Dan Morigliata.
I'm Derek Brunson. I'm Nick the Carney Lentz, and you're locked into the cage with Cyclone.
Yes, I did, sir.
All right, so what I did now, guys, is I packed up the cage, took it down to Central New Jersey to the Rahway Rec Center, and joining me now is the third-ranked welterweight in the UFC, none other than Chaos himself, Mr. Colby Covington. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
First of all, I just got to ask you right off the bat, how is having John Jones as a roommate in college?
Oh, man, it was crazy, man. John Jones is a wild man. He loved the party. He loved He loved to just, be adventurous and do crazy, spontaneous things. So we definitely had a crazy adventures in college.
A little bit of Animal House?
A little, yeah. I'd say maybe a crazier version of Animal House.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you want Woodley, and everybody wants the champ. But if Dana came to you and said, a eliminator shot, Wonder Boy or RDA, is there someone you'd rather take on?
Yeah, definitely RDA, because Wonder Boy's already had 2 shots of the belt, so they're not going to give Wonder Boy another shot of the belt. So, with my history that I have with Brazil, I just beat the best Brazilian welterweight in the history of Brazil. Damian Maia is on a different level than RDA. So, the history that I have, Brazil has a lot of beef with me. I'm probably the most famous person in Brazil. Maybe it's for hate, but it's still the most famous, talked about person in Brazil. It's me, Colby Covington. So, I think an interim title fight with me and RDA makes sense, and I hope the UFC makes it happen.
So, out of every gym there is, what makes ATT so special that everybody wants to join you guys?
Yeah, it starts from, the top up. The top manager, the guy who owns the gym is my manager, Dan Lambert. And from him on down, John Hartnett, Richie, and just all the coaches. We have the best coaches in the world for every discipline, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, or wrestling, and then just the training partners, So on top of that, we have world-class facilities, and it makes for the best gym in the world.
Now, being that you were a wrestler from a much, much younger age, so obviously that's going to be your strong suit.
Yeah.
Is there any form of the arts that you when they say, Colby, it's time to do Muay Thai, it's time to do this, you're like, nah, I'd rather not if I could avoid it?
Nah, man, I'm a true martial artist, and I'm all about perfecting my craft. So I work on all the areas of martial arts that I need to do to be the best martial artist I can be. So I don't work on as much wrestling anymore because I know my wrestling's Olympic level. It's the highest level you can get. So now, the last 10 years, I'm just working on Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu, and I want to be the most evolutionized fighter they've ever seen. I want everybody to be like, they don't know if he's a wrestler, if he's a Muay Thai fighter, or if he's a Jiu-Jitsu fighter, but he's very good at all the martial arts.
Now, being that you just worked with King Mo and Dan Lambert and a couple of others, have there been a little bit of whispering, hey, if Dana doesn't give you what you want, slide on over to Bellator, with Rory now taking over for Lima as champion? Is that more of a delicious way for you to go, worst case scenario?
I mean, money talks. I'm a money fighter. I fight for prizes. So, if they want, whoever they're going to, I'm a bad guy for hire. Whoever wants to hire me for the most amount of money, I'll go and fight wherever. It doesn't matter where it is, but I'm a professional prize fighter. So whoever's going to pay me the biggest amount of money, that's where I'm going to go fight.
Now, Stipe's a fireman. Demetrius is a gamer. And Ally Quinta does real estate. Outside of combat sports, is there anything that just drives you away where you don't have to deal with the cage stuff or the fighting?
Yeah, definitely. I use Texas Hold'em poker for that. I'm like a semi-professional amateur poker player. So, yeah, I love to play Texas Hold'em. I play a lot of big tournaments, like big buy-in tournaments. I play a lot of high-stakes cash games. So, I love playing poker, man. That's my thing, to get my mind away from fightings, because you need to get your mind away. If you want to be successful in fighting, you can't be thinking it every day. You need to get your mind away, and that's what helps get my mind away, and it eases and relaxes my mind, and then I reset, and I'm ready to go get my world title.
Now, being you just said that, and I had no idea you were going to go that way, can you do me a tiny favor?
What's that?
I was in a pro-am a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And Daniel Negreanu just smoked me, slow played me, ripped me apart.
That's what they do.
Put him in a rear naked choke. If you ever get the chance to play him, just crime be damned. Just jump over the table and just snatch him up if you can.
I play a lot of WPT events and a lot of WSOP events in Vegas, so if I see Daniel Negreanu, I'm gonna get his ass. That little Canadian syrup sucker.
Do you see more pro wrestling in your future going forward, or are you just not? Or is it going to be a limit and that's where you're going to take it, and you're not going to go further in with pro wrestling?
Yeah. For my immediate future, I'm really focused on being a world champion in martial arts, in the UFC. That's what I set out for when I was a little kid, is I wanted to be a world champion in the UFC. So once I fulfill my goals in fighting, then I want to move on to my next challenge. I do want to be a pro wrestling world champion, so WWE is the platform. That's the number one platform. So, I'm looking to go down that avenue, and hopefully you'll see me in the pro wrestling ring in a couple of years after I'm done with my martial arts career.
Now, Matt Riddle's enjoying himself. Ronda now, obviously, is the big talk as far as crossing over that way. How do you think Ronda would fare?
I think, if she keeps her same persona that she had in the UFC, she was that bad girl that walked around with a chip on her shoulder. She was pissed, she was mean, but, when you see her in her first interview with the WWE, she kind of marked out. She kind of, she made herself look shy, and she didn't look like the same Ronda that everybody's accustomed to, and that's that confident woman who believed in herself, She kind of looked like she was starstruck, and I hope she doesn't mess it up with the MMA fighters, because I want to follow in the footsteps and be in the WWE next.
Now, if a little kid came up to you and said, Colby, what do I have to do to get into the UFC? What advice would you have for him?
I would tell him, you got to work for it. Every day it's hard work, it's nothing good comes easy. So, you need to work hard for it. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to make sacrifices. A lot of people, they don't want to make the sacrifices it takes to get there, whether it's sacrificing something in training, sacrificing something in your diet, but there has to be sacrifices made to make it at the highest level.
Well, Colby, I want to thank you very much for your time on this very late night.
Yeah.
I want to say I hope you get the chance to smoke Tyron, T-Wood, whatever he wants to call himself. And I think that belt will look really, really sweet around your waist, and I hope it happens.
This year, man, 2018 is the year of chaos, man. I'm going to make the UFC great again.
Thank you so much again, Kobe.
Thanks a lot, man.
So how cool was that, guys? Chaos himself, Colby Covington, talking to us in the cage. Now, right after these quick messages, I'm going to have a third guest stop by. And this guest is a legendary icon of the sport. Got to keep it right here in the cage with Cyclone to find out who's coming on next in 3, 2, 1.
I'm Dennis Bermudez. Hi, I'm Creepy Ian McCall.
Yo, I'm Kelvin Gastelum.
This is Mark Goldberg. Yo, I'm the world's most dangerous man, Hall of Famer Ken Shamrock, and you're getting tapped out in the cage with Cyclone.
Hey, guess what, everyone? Joining me now inside the cage. Forget about Verdum, forget about Stipe, forget about Brock Lesnar. Before all of them, there was a real beast, and his name is Dan Severn, and he's here now in the cage. Dan, how you doing?
Well, I've never been cornered quite like this. I'm glad that the cages were all round. It can't be happening then, can it?
So I'm curious, looking back throughout your entire career, is there one stat that just you're in total awe of?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Jack, I never watched the product. So that's not. So I mean, that's an easy answer. No, because I didn't watch the product. That's probably the only reason. I was made aware of it by a buddy who simply showed me the first couple old VHS tapes. I mean, he watched the actual live show, and he copied them on old VHS tape, and he showed them to me. And he said, hey, you got to think about doing this. I've seen people being soccer kicked in the face, teeth are flying out, and thinking, no, these are not exactly skills I possess. But then he said, well, look at this skinny little guy doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Of course, he was referring to Hoist Gracie. And I thought, well, the guy's got to be within arm's reach to punch me, legs range to knee, kick. Well, why not just stay outside range? And they throw out, and they recall in, simply slide on up, clinch him, take him down, or jam him up against the cage wall and say, hello, and welcome to my world.
See, now, for me to look at your MMA career, being a heavyweight, because before you, guys your size only like to throw leather. And you kind of were the first to reverse things with 60 submissions.
Oh, I mean, well, the reality is that, well, again, I'll say that in a couple of terms. People wondered how I stayed in that industry for as long as I did. I mean, how many people are going to do 2 decades? They're not. You know, and then to start at an age I started at. I mean, you might be in there for a while, but you would not be having this intelligent of a conversation because you'd be drooling down your chin and you'd be going, you know, because, you know, taking punishment, taking that physical punishment. I'll say that it's been brought to my attention on a multitude of times that, like, how were you able to do all those matches and then literally walk away with your ears still look like ears, your nose still sits in the center of your face, you don't talk with any slurred speech, things of that nature. And I go, well, I said, getting hit sucks. It's better to give than receive it. I'm a giver.
Okay, so between amateur wrestling, pro wrestling, and mixed martial arts, which, for you at least, was more physically demanding?
Well, honestly, the safest thing I did was cage fighting. And that's almost like a contradiction in terms, because just in the sheer number of matches I had in amateur wrestling, especially, you know, not really the domestic side, because domestic side has a lot of rules, regulations, but international competition, freestyle, Greco, competing against different countries, country pride, the way that each country basically poisons their citizens, their athletes with propaganda, stuff like this. The United States is hated by a lot of countries,
right?
Because of all the things that we represent that they don't have, the freedoms that they don't have. But again, the propaganda machine just tends to spill on out. So Americans are hated. So I'd be on mats. You know, the term being homered. I'd be being homered left and right. I'd have 2 former Eastern Bloc countries as 2 other referees. They have to have the best 2 out of 3 always doing, you know, for making any kind of a physical call out during the match, the point that they were in nature and being screwed over left and right. So, you know, I was used to a very hostile environment. So I always tell people that my amateur wrestling career prepared me so well for walking into an octagon cage. I learned to tune the crowd out so easily because they're being booed when I was in foreign countries. So,
now, when one helped the other, do you think growing up on a farm helped at all in combat sports?
Well, I'll say that it helped me in a way that I'm a very structured person. I'm a creature of habits, but I'm very structured in the sense that, as my father put it, son, do you like to eat? Yes, I do, Dad. Well, so do the animals. Do you like to drink? Well, yes, I do, Dad. So do the animals. And the animals have to be taken care of before you're taken care of. And you have to do this all before you have to head off and catch the bus or something to head off to school.
Now,
So, that's structure. And then, but then even, the easy part is doing it in the morning. The hard part is when you come back home, because you're not coming home right back after school. There's usually a practice, whether that was a football practice, a wrestling practice, a track and field practice, but then it might be after going to an away football game, going to a wrestling, all-day wrestling tournament. And so, it might be 10, 11, midnight by the time you go out there and do that. And one of my chores was all on top of just doing, feeding some of the animals. And you name the animals, we raised them all. I was also the duties of milking Peggy, the milk cow, the family milk cow.
Wow. Now, out of every one of your opponents,
I'll just say there's a lot of comical stories right there, but at the same token, just a lot of good fun things, great memories of being raised on a farm. Because again, the structure, the hard work that goes with it, and also the creativity, because you have to make things work. I always said that my father could breathe life into things that should have been put down years earlier, but he was able to, revive it and fix things. And even as I speak to you right now, I'm up in Wilkes, California, and we're in the process of cleaning and making something look good for a presentation for what's going to be taking place here in probably about 3-4 hours.
Now, who would you say was your toughest opponent that you've ever had to mix it up with?
It would be another wrestler or grappler. Only because that was the strongest skill set I was bringing to the table. And when again, to back up to the beginning of this conversation, when I walked out to that octagon cage, not a single family member knew what I was doing. I kept them all in the dark because I didn't want them, first off, I didn't want them to worry about me. And I simply knew that I was already, my first profession was actually as a professional wrestler as of the 92 Olympics. And I jumped into the cage fight stuff as of 1994. And so, again, just to say that, I just told him I was going to go off and do some wrestling. So I basically, it's kind of like a white lie because, based on my skill set, that's exactly what I was going to be doing some wrestling because I did a 5-day training camp, 5 days, an hour and a half a day for UFC number 4. I had Al Snow, professional wrestler Al Snow. He was my corner man. What does he know about the fight game and stuff like that? Well, honestly, nothing. But it being involved in the professional, and I don't say that to be mean or not like that, but that's not the world that he's from. And, my training camp, I traveled from Coldwater, Michigan, basically a little over a 2-hour drive one way to do basically a 3-hour workout and then a 2-hour drive back. So you got to look at that. I've got 7 hours invested in one workout. And then the only reason it was an hour and a half was just because of, these guys, they had no more gas. I stayed in the ring the entire time, but we didn't have a cage. There was only one cage. It was owned by the UFC, so the closest they would come to was a professional wrestling ring. And that we're inside that. And between Al and 2 other professionals and proteges, they had one old pair of boxing gloves, and they just kept swapping out, saying, here's your turn. No, it's your turn. And they're cussing at each other, stuff like this. I mean, it was right. I mean, literally, my training camp was very comical. If you really had a chance to watch it, I did not learn a single strike. I never learned a single legitimate submission. When I showed up to UFC number 4, again, they want to know where you're from, so you get that information, your height, your weight. Not that weight they really care, but they want to be able to put out the tail of the tape so when they show, just a 200-pound difference or whatever like that, they can show that kind of stuff because there were no weight classes. There were no time periods. And you only had the 2 rules to abide by, just no biting, no eye gouging. And you had the 8-man tournament. And so when they asked me, well, what's your discipline? And I'm like, I've never been asked a question like that. And I go, well, I'm an American wrestler. Well, they had never heard that response before. And they're like, well, what the heck is that going to do for you? And I looked right at the person. I go, you might want to watch. I'm simply making this up as I go. And literally, I was. I mean, they laughed about it, but I'm telling the truth. I've never been in a cage before. I've never been in a fist fight before.
Wow.
So it's kind of like when I tussled with my brothers growing up, but there was no real fights. I mean, I've never been in a real fight. Even all of the things I did in the world of mixed martial arts or old smart, are they real fights? No, there were still rules. I mean, and now, especially in mixed martial arts, there's either 47 or 49 rules. So is it a real fight? No. It's just like boxing. Is boxing a real fight? No. Same way with Muay Thai, kickboxing. They all have these rules. It's kind of like, okay, you clinched me. You can't clinch me. Let me go. Oh, you got me down. Step back. Give me the counter 10. I mean, all of these pugilistic arts or combat sports, as they're known as, they all have all kinds of rules. The closest any of it was to a real fight was when this no holds barred was first start going, and that only lasted for a couple of years because of different politicians and legislators that were going after the sport, calling it barbaric and the decline of human civilization and, Roman Colosseum days, things of that nature.
Right. Now, out of curiosity, how are things between you and Ken Shamrock?
Well, I won't be sending him a Christmas card yet again this year. I won't even bother to send him a lump of coal. that's how mean and vicious I will be to him. How's that?
See, and the reason why I ask is because Crow Cop is still fighting, Fedor's still fighting. Recently, Chuck Liddell teased that he wants to get back into it. Dan Hardy said he wants to come back. And I was thinking, since it's 1-1 between the two of you, would you ever consider stepping back into a cage to fight?
Well, that was supposed to have happened. Literally, I think just over 2 years ago, the rubber match was supposed to take place. Again, just kept trying to make a long story short. I was approached by a company that wanted to put this match together. I agreed to the terms. Ken had already agreed to terms, signed an LOI, actually took a cash advancement and things of that nature. And then basically now starts telling the company, really just a lot of arrogant things. It's almost too much to go into, but all I know is that in the end of it all, 9 days before our scheduled match, he bows out.
Wow.
And again, he'll use different excuses like, well, it was because he did this Bellator match
with Hoist, I think.
Yes, and he gets injured, and he's got to take a 30-day suspension. And then there's also the fact that he tested positive for steroids yet again. So there's an additional suspension. Since it's your second time tested positive for steroids, you got to go stand in the corner a little bit extra long time. And then he also tested positive for opiates, which just means he was probably on some painkillers or something like that, because a lot of painkillers are opium-based as well. So again, he gets 3 different things he's got to go stand in the corner for. And I'm not a young guy. I'm the oldest guy on the circuit. I can't wait around for ding-dongs, ne'er-do-wells, misfits. I can't wait around. I don't want to wait around. I just moved on. But, if opportunity comes up like this, I mean, it's one thing about Dan Severn is I'm a brutally blunt and honest person. Even my enemies respect the fact that what comes out of my mouth is the truth, but most people can't handle the truth. I live in the real world, or I work on a daily basis doing things. But there's a lot of people, again, I deal with the world of professional wrestling, which is fantasy at its finest. It's Halloween. You get to dress up and be somebody else. But some of these characters, they live in that world for so long, they soon forget, where does fantasy end and reality begin?
Now, that actually segues into a very good question. Being that you've dealt with two, and I'll say from the outside, two egomaniacs, do you see any other similarities between a Dana and a Vince McMahon?
Well, I think Dana has a much more vocalized vocabulary than what Vince has. Vince has much more greater facial expressions. Dana's got the quarter market on the F-bomb. So let's say, especially when you had Conor McGregor, Dana White, they're doing the upcoming hype with the boxing match, and I drawing the blank on person number 3 versus. Help me out here.
Floyd.
Yeah. So just between the three of them, they should just call the F tour. So there's more F bombs. I go, you guys really do need a pocktosaurus. There are a few other words you guys could actually throw in there. It means the exact same thing, but people will actually think you're intelligent if you just use a multi-syllable word. It doesn't have like the same zing, but it is what it is.
Now, look, since you bring it up about crossover sports, there's been a lot of that now. And now there's the talk of Floyd wanting to step in the cage with Conor. And, look, far be it from me to say what one of the best pro athletes of all time can or cannot do. I think he would be smoked and murked by Conor in a cage.
I'll just say that, had I been an advisor to Conor for the boxing match, it would have been, in the professional terms, it would have been, the match is over. He actually congratulates Floyd Mayweather for winning tonight's boxing contest. And basically, and the fact that I stepped into your arena this evening. Are you willing to take the same risk 1 year from tonight's date? And I think it would have been a good spin-off right there and there that he had to done something like that. Is it still marketable? Oh, of course it's marketable because, they both walked away with fantastic paydays. Everybody won because, Floyd won because, he won, and Conor won because, he walked away with his best payday ever for a boxing match, not MMA, but for a boxing match. And he represented himself really well in that boxing match. And that and the fans won because it wasn't simply a 1 or 2 round blowout. So everybody walked away a winner in that contest.
Now, when you crossed over, did anybody try to throw any cheap shots towards you?
What do you mean? I was a professional wrestler first, and then went into the world of mixed martial arts. A lot of people think it's just the opposite, but as of '92 Olympics, first professional thing, then '94 cage fight type stuff. It did not even exist, when I did that. But then I go. But if you realize here the timetables, 1969, 7th grade is when I started my amateur wrestling career. So 1969 I start. By 1971, my freshman year in high school, I'm teaching amateur wrestling. By 1972, I win my first national title. By 1976, I'm the number one recruit, my senior year, I'm the number one recruit in the United States at my weight class, and I've got the GPA to go along there with it, along with a congressional nomination, so now I can go to Air Force Academy, things of that nature. So I do a Cinderella story at my freshman year at Arizona State, going undefeated and pinning 5 out of 6 state place finishers. That's all happened in 1976. Let's just jump another 2 decades later. By 1996, I'm the number one cage fighter in the world. Jump again to 2016. I was supposed to be in a cage fighting again. I just went over 4 decades alone. How many people can go over a career of 4 decades? And actually, it's literally closer to 5 when you look at. When you add up my amateur wrestling, all of the amateur wrestling into it.
Absolutely none.
They were in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2010, up to and now going into the 2010 to 2020 range. And the scary part here is I'm not done. I will be unveiling something here later this year. My next career of competition.
So let me ask you this. Do you think Ronda could succeed with her crossing over into wrestling?
Oh, I think she'd be perfect. I mean, that she has great facial expressions already. I mean, the way that she portrayed herself in her MMA career alone. I mean, that pouty face and mean heelish type of tendencies. I think she'd make a great heel.
Do you think because of the perceived lack of mic skills, she would need someone like a Paul Heyman to be with her?
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't know if you could say that it is. I mean, she has been really been given the opportunity, and you're also asking probably one of the worst people about that as well, because I was not known for my mic abilities there as well. But it's like there are some people that they're good at really just flapping their yap, and there's other people that are just better at just going out there and just physically just doing things. I think given the right opportunity and grooming and tutoring, should do just fine.
Now, when you stepped into the cage, it was the one-night tournaments, which is basically what, at least to my memory, what wrestling was always.
Well, it's the same. Well, if you're talking about mixed martial arts still, or the no holds barred era, it's still the same 2-hour pay-per-view that runs to this day, but where multiple matches take place, just one-on-one. Back then, you had to complete three matches. And then basically just 3 men, because there was no women that were competing at that point in time. So, that era basically, once that era was gone and MMA was moving more and more into it, then, I think a few years after MMA had been already, coined, then the women's competition in MMA started up as well.
With your background, though, are you more of a fan of, that one-night type tournament style, or maybe spreading it out all year like what Bellator is doing with their heavyweight championship?
I'll give you two different answers. I'll give it from a spectator's perspective, but then from a promoter's perspective. Now, from a spectator's perspective, you can really make a superstar in one night, because the concept of fighting 3 individuals in less than a 2 hour is mind-boggling, because you have to make short work of those first 2 matches. You got to take the least amount of damage. But see, it's people like the first time that they see you out there, say, you're pristine looking. There's no marks on you, stuff like this. Okay, you're ready to throw down. Okay, match number 2. Okay, you might have a little mouse. You might have a little crustacean of blood or something like this, but you're ready to throw down again. But by match number 3, you look like you've been pulled through a knothole backwards. You do have a few lumps and bruises, and yet you're ready to throw down again. That's when people went nuts for that third time. Like, oh my God, unbelievable that a person can do something like that. And again, the bragging points for me are numerous categories. The fact that I started a cage fighting career. The UFC never even had an age right. And I started having just fun with them after when their lives started to get me my real numbers. I started a career just before turning 37 years of age. That's when I started.
Wow.
But I achieved a lot of success in my amateur wrestling career early. I did things at a young age, at 17 years of age. I'm walking out onto the wrestling mats against my peers, well, not my peers, I mean, men that moves are named after. I went to the wrestling clinics, the wrestling camps, and the moves are named after them, and now I'm actually out there wrestling these guys. And I finished in the top 6. I did something that was unbelievable, and I was brought into the Olympic training camp just because it's just I showed a lot of promise. So I mean, that's early in my career. But then, on the flip side, you look at 30 some odd years later, there I am, climbing into a cage.
What do you miss most?
What do I miss most? I mean, I'm not. That's such an open question. I'll say that the only thing that I complain about is time, and its lack of it. Opportunities are such abundance around me. I mean, almost each day that I fire up my laptop, and it's like Christmas coming in. But a lot of it is because of, most of who I am, how I treat people, how I interact with people. A lot of good things come back to me, and I'm a big believer in karma, and you reap what you sow and things of that nature. And I've got people that I've had in wrestling camps when they're in junior high, and these people now are in their late 30s, early 40s, and they still come up to me and they're like, "Coach, I remember when you said this, or when I was in junior high at the wrestling camp, stuff like that." That makes me feel good that I've made that kind of an impression, and that is the footprint that I will leave is the fact that I made a difference in a positive way.
Now, how much of opening up the training center is a part of that?
Well, I had my own training facility. I purchased the place back in fall of '91 because, again, my love of amateur wrestling. I moved to the Coldwater area for a job opportunity, and at that time I could have never afforded a business and a residence simultaneously, but we saw this one house. It had this big storage facility. And I kept thinking, I could turn the storage facility into something really cool. It'll take me some time because of the monetary outlay and stuff like that, but I know I could turn it into something. You fast forward to today, I mean, it's one of the coolest buildings I'll ever be in. And anyone that walks in there, they're like going, they go from room to room to room. They're like going, oh, the first room, well, that's pretty cool. They go to the next room, they're like, wow, there's more. Go to the next room, oh, there's even more. And then there's even more. They're blown away because there's not another training facility like it in the world. And I don't say that braggadociously. I just simply state it as matter-of-factly. I think I'm the only training facility in the world that underneath one roof I have amateur wrestlers, professional wrestlers, mixed martial artists, and then kids classes along with adult classes.
Now, I know working with law enforcement is something very special to you.
Well, I do work with a lot of first responders. I mean, it's law enforcement, but I mean, but almost with all first responders. So I do stuff with law enforcement. I do stuff with corrections. I do stuff with air marshals, border patrol, and military. And I take a great deal of pride in what I show there and what I teach. And I even point out, because I'm not the politically correct individual, but I'm allowed to call a spade when you're in a room like that, because, or point out the elephant that's in the room, because the reality is a lot of stuff that they're being taught is going to get officers or our military personnel injured and or killed, because you have people that have never done your job. All of a sudden they try to tell you how to do your job. And that, to me, is just asinine. If you're going to be making rules and regulations for a field such as law enforcement, you had better be former law enforcement. You had better been on that job, not just for a couple of years. You better been on that job for 20 or more years, because you understand the criminal element and you understand how things really need to be done. The cell phone is a wonderful tool. So now people, they pull out like the record. Yeah, it's kind of like, sure, there's always going to be a couple bad cops. Just like any industry. Is everyone going to be good? No. So you're going to find some bad people, but they try to exonerate and make an entire industry look bad because of maybe a couple bad apples. Like you can do that in any industry in the world.
Now I understand.
If that's your objective.
Now I also understand on your very, very long journeys, you're going to be stopping by New Orleans for WrestleCon.
Yes, I'll be. I think it's really not that far away, but in some aspects, because of what I'm in the midst of a 30-day a travel-a-thon that I know I will be setting a record for a rental car and the number of mileage. Look this way, I've already had one oil change on the vehicle. I will need a second oil change here shortly.
Setting another record.
Do I know the record? Oh, I know that. Well, again, I went repeatedly from Enterprise rental car in Coldwater, Michigan, and the guys that are there. I mean, I think they live sort of vicariously through me, because they're like, "Oh, where are you heading up today?" Like first time I came back and they saw the miles, like going, "Man, where'd you go?" And I go, "Everywhere," you know. That's of the rental car. I go, I said, "Enterprise." I said, "I'm an Enterprise team." guy. I'm out doing this. I'm out doing it. they get a kick out of my demeanor about that. But like on this trip, I know probably by the time I give the vehicle back, I do believe I will be well over 10,000 miles.
I think at that point they might should just as well just give you the car.
Well, I'm actually working on that. I'm working on, there used to be another athlete by the name of, why they just, because for Hertz Rental Car, you had, O.J. Simpson. There you go. O.J. Simpson was always doing the rental car commercials for Hertz Rental Car.
Right.
Of course, that kind of went south due to a few different reasons, but I could think that, well, I'll jump in there for Enterprise because I just like the name and the fact that I'm a very enterprising individual and what I'm trying to do in a lot of different sectors. Because even though people haven't seen me in a cage, does that mean I'm no longer involved in that industry? Oh, not by a long shot. I'm involved in that industry. I'm doing things that other people should have done decades ago, but I'm just doing them. I'm not talking about it. It's kind of like Nike. Nike should have been all over me decades ago because I don't talk about things. I just do things. Just do it. So again, that's where there's a lot of people that I say, there's two types of people. There are those that are going to sit on the sidelines and watch life pass by and talk about it. There's other people that are simply going to engage the game. I'm just going to engage the game and see what else. What's going to be my next great adventure? What else could I do to make people go ooh and ah over? And I'm thinking, get up there yourself. Get off that couch. Quit working that remote control with that thumb. You got overdeveloped thumb. But that's the same thing for all of our millennials coming up. They got overdeveloped two thumbs the way they can see them work that keyboard with both thumbs.
Well, I know you're close with Don Fry. So how has he been doing recently?
Don's been through a lot. Yeah, he's been a lot through in his personal life, but a lot through just his own physical health. He's one of those athletes that has paid the ultimate price of blood, sweat, tears. The reality is, through his competition, I hate to say this, but I'm the guy that I call the elephant in the room. His life will be probably a lot shorter than what it probably should be, and his quality of life has been affected by his competition as well. A lot of people like to cheer and roar because they're standing there toe-to-toe and just knocking the bell cap out of each other, but how many people really want to be in a match?
True.
Nobody does. But there's a lot of people like to sit back. We got our armchair quarterbacks that are going to boo and hiss and complain, and I'm thinking, yeah, dude with the one ab, yeah. What would you have done?
I'll tell you what. You talk about booing. I was at the World Series of Fighting, Madison Square Garden card, and the entire 200 section during the Jake Shields and John Fitch match were just relentlessly booing. I'm like, guys, really? You not everybody is just going to be in the center of the cage just throwing leather around.
Yeah. Like I said, it's you didn't have to tune into this, but everyone does like what the good old slobber knocker. The words of Jim Rohn.
Now, on that topic, is CTE, do you think, an issue for the guys of your generation and not so much the guys of this generation?
Okay, yeah, I missed what you said at the beginning. Is what?
CTE. The concussion syndrome?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, it's no. I think, it's being addressed in a number of different sports. I mean, you talk about football alone, and they no longer want helmet-to-helmet type of tackling that take place, collisions. amateur wrestling now. I mean, it's looking at more and more when guys are being slammed to the mat. You know, their heads are bouncing off the mat, things of nature. You know, belly back suplexes. You know, whether that be done in amateur wrestling or in professional wrestling. You know, just there's different athletes that have died early, and they've had autopsies, and they're seeing all these dark spots on the brain and stuff like this. So it shows that they've had multiple concussions. So I think it will always be there in any type of physical combat type of sport. I mean, football is a combat sport as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you're all padded up, stuff like this, but even think about baseball, taking a ball to the head or something like that. A fast pitch, it drops. Or if a line drive. Now, a soccer ball, the way they get kicked off, and you see the way they get jacked, and the crowd all does a big ooh and ah, and then the big old ha 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 and stuff like this. But that gray matter inside your head there is called the brain. It's like Jello. It's not meant to be sloshed around like that. Right. So it's I think there will always be problems with it. I think there are ways that we can help. I mean, again, whether it's due to athletics or even a lot of our soldiers that are returning with PTSD because of being traumatized in battle or being blown up and things of that nature. They're coming back with issues and things of that nature. And then there's things that I'm working on in those industries with the hyperbaric chambers and the ECP machines, and along with the CBD oil. Again, these are things that people are not aware of, but just kind of going, shoot, you guys, I'm not sitting there and eating Fritos while watching the boob tube. I very rarely watch the boob tube.
Watching boobs is good, though.
What's that?
Watching boobs is fun, though.
Well, I think we're talking about something different. Yeah. That's really good for your heart rate. It's going to increase your heart rate, stuff like this. It makes a man smile too. Yeah. Okay.
So, I would like to thank you so very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad that you that way to set this on up there, Cyclone Jack, and then I hope that if any of your listeners want to learn a little bit more about the man they call the Beast, again, the ring name the Beast was not something I made up. It was given to me by the legendary football player, NFL football player, I should say Hall of Famer, NFL football player, Jim Brown. And he's one of the play-by-play commentators, and basically made some comments from how I transitioned from being the guy that showed up in a sports jacket, wearing a tie and glasses, into this a.k.a. Superman taking off his glasses, stuff like that, and then climbing into in his cage, and then for me climbing into a cage. So he's the one that gave me the ring name, the Beast. But the Beast has a lot of negative connotations. Anyone that knows me knows what a positive person I am. So the word "the" stands for Dan Severn, T-H-E, teacher, humanitarian, and educator. My message to young people is Beast. Believe in yourself, to educate yourself, to adjust your everyday attitude, to study hard, and then to teach others, because you can't take it with you.
And I want to remind all my listeners to check out The Beast over at dansevern.com.
Yep, that's where all my social medias are as well. And then you can jump on and follow me on my Facebook pages, whatever, because I've got about half a dozen of them. And because I'm still involved in professional, I still run my own little MMA companies, have a 10,000 square foot training facility on top of speaking engagements and anything else that I do. So I have a very interesting life there, Jack. I feel like this: if variety is the spice of life, Jack, I must be the spiciest person in the world.
Very, very true. And like I said, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Cyclone Jack.
All right, cool. Talk to you later.
Bye.
So how cool was that? You guys have heard from Matt Riddle, Colby Covington, and Dan Severin. And guess what, guys? Keep it right here on In the Cage with Cyclone. In the Cage with Cyclone on Facebook. Follow along. I'm going to be doing some more interview stuff on the road. Packing up the cage. Taking it on the road. Doing some more interviews coming up. Maybe even do like a fan round table. I don't know. It depends on whether or not this lovely studio will be completely fixed and up and at 'em. And like I said, keep following on Facebook, In the Cage with Cyclone. On Twitter at CYCIE19 to get all your info. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I am Cyclone saying, just because you are not an athlete doesn't mean you cannot be an athletic supporter.